take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, March 10th, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us here live on CannabisRadio.com, where I'm coming to you from beautiful legal Astoria, Oregon. That's right, Astoria, Oregon, the northern tip of the Oregon coast, right there at the mouth of the Columbia River, the end of the journey for Lewis and Clark on their expedition in the 19th century. There's a lot of history here. There's a lot of heritage here, a lot of Native American history, of course, here as well. But I think what most people know Astoria for is it's the home of the Goonies. That's right. Goonies never say die. And we're coming to you live from Astoria today. We'll be in Phoenix next week. Got my schedule somewhat worked out, so we'll be flying out Monday to Phoenix, Arizona, and bringing you some shows from the desert. So stay tuned for those. Coming up on today's show, we are going to take a look at democracy in this country. In the Radical Rant, I'm going to take a look at the state of Maine and the state of Michigan, where the officials there, the elected officials, are doing everything in their power to deny the right of the people to set their own laws. And it's just another example, another couple of examples of the people in power trying to thwart the efforts of the people themselves to pass laws they don't particularly like. And so they're putting in all sorts of roadblocks and stumbling blocks for us to try to get past. We'll take a look at that in Maine and Michigan and also compare it to what's going on in the Democratic primary, where Bernie Sanders mopped the floor with Hillary Clinton last night at the Univision debate in Miami, receiving a standing ovation at the end of his concluding remarks. We'll talk all about that as well, and we'll take it into Toker Talk Radio, Hour 2, where you can call in with your comments, suggestions, questions, criticisms at 971-533-7111. But in the rest of this first hour, we've also got a flashback interview to 2010 where I got the chance to speak with longtime political gadfly and hemp enthusiast, friend of Willie Nelson and plenty of marijuana reformers, Gatewood Galbraith, who passed away not long ago. I did get the chance to speak to him before he passed in 2010, and we'll play that interview for you at 1:30. Also on the show today, we're going to do some drug war data mining because there's yet another state that is passing, it looks poised to pass one of these drug testing for welfare bills where they require poor people to have to pass a P-test before they can get their benefits. We'll talk about why those are such a huge mistake and what we can do to try to educate people about the reality of these drug testing for welfare bills, how wasteful they are and ineffective. Also on the show and behind the headlines, we're taking a look at an offer by Kush Inc. and its CEO, Steve Cubby, of $1 million in Kush stock to help the Marijuana Control Legalization and Revenue Act, the act competing with the Adult Use of Marijuana Act in California to legalize the Golden State in 2016. But before we get to all of that, we do the Cannabis Radio News, and in the headlines today, we take a focus on Maine, where those officials are trying to stop the legalization petition gathering that took place for an initiative to legalize. Also, a statute for impaired driving has run into a roadblock in Maine. We've got North Dakota possibly moving forward for legalization. We've got medical users in Canada mad at their premiere in Ontario, and a judge rejecting a short sentence for an 80-year-old man in a marijuana dealing operation.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
We don't limit how much you smoke, and we don't limit where you listen. Cannabis Radio is now on iTunes, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks may be far less than those posed by legal drugs.
Tommy Chong Show on Cannabis Radio. You know, about this podcast, what I really want to do from now on is to solve world problems. I feel like my job is to calm everybody down and focus on how we can save this planet.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News. Covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Thursday, March 10th, 2016. Backers of an initiative to regulate marijuana like alcohol in Maine filed a lawsuit on Thursday challenging the Secretary of State's decision to disqualify the measure from the November ballot. According to the suit, which is now available online, state officials improperly invalidated thousands of signatures of registered Maine voters and unlawfully denied citizens their constitutional right to vote on the measure. At issue is the validity of one notary's signature at the bottom of 5,099 petitions rejected by elected officials. About 17,000 signatures are on those petitions, enough to put the question on the state ballot if the petitions are validated. State elections officials have thrown out the petition, saying the notary's signature doesn't match the signature on file. According to the initiative's backers' lawsuit, the Secretary of State's decision is flawed because the disputed signatures do, in fact, match those on file, and because the Secretary of State acted outside his authority in invalidating the petitions. Lawmakers in Maine remain divided over a bill that attempts to establish a blood level limit for police to determine whether a driver is impaired from marijuana use. The legislature's Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee voted 7-4 Thursday to reject the bill after voicing concerns that setting a legal limit for THC, the psychoactive compound in marijuana, would not be an accurate measurement of impairment because the drug affects people differently and it lingers in the blood long after its psychoactive effects have disappeared. A minority of the committee believes that the state needs to establish testing protocols to ensure that police and prosecutors are equipped to handle what a recent survey by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration found was a marked increase in the proportion of drivers testing positive for marijuana. Backers of a proposed measure to legalize marijuana in North Dakota will start soon gathering signatures to try to put it on the November 8th ballot. Secretary of State Al Jaeger on Wednesday approved their petition for circulation. Sponsors must gather at least 13,452 signatures of eligible voters by July 11th to put the statutory measure to a statewide vote. Eric Olson of Fargo, who chairs the 26-member sponsoring committee, said supporters will start gathering signatures right away, and he hopes to gather 20,000 for a safe margin. If approved, the measure would make it legal for those over age 21 to grow, possess, use, and distribute marijuana, and would prevent the state from requiring a license to do so. It would also prohibit the state, cities, and counties from taxing marijuana and marijuana paraphernalia at greater than 20%. Medical marijuana users in Canada are hopping mad about Ontario's new province-wide curbs on toking and vaping for medical marijuana.
Premier Kathleen Wynne's government is banning the use of cannabis in all enclosed places, workplaces, and most outdoor areas. Quote, "We have made a determination that smoking, whatever it is, whether it's vaping, whether it's medical marijuana, whether it's cigarettes, there should be restrictions on that," end quote, Wynne said. She told reporters the government made the right decision and is prepared to defend it if, for example, the ban is challenged in the courts by medical marijuana users, arguing the need for their prescribed pot is no different than any other prescription. Quote, "That's a possibility, I suppose, but I think it's pretty commonsensical that if you're not allowed to smoke a cigarette, you shouldn't be allowed to smoke anything else in the places where we have already deemed that smoking cigarettes is not acceptable," end quote. A federal judge has rejected a plea agreement that called for a 5 to 7 year prison sentence for an 80-year-old man who ran a multi-state marijuana dealing operation. Marshall Dion was scheduled to be sentenced Thursday in U.S. District Court, but the hearing was canceled after Judge Denise Casper rejected the plea agreement and the joint sentencing recommendation by Dion's lawyers and prosecutors. Casper had postponed the hearing last month after she questioned both sides about why the proposed sentence was so much lower than the 30-year sentence called for under federal sentencing guidelines. Authorities said Dion ran a sprawling marijuana enterprise for decades. When police stopped him for speeding in 2013 in Kansas, they found about $828,000 in cash in his beat-up pickup truck. This is your Cannabis Radio News for Thursday, March 10th, 2016. I'm Russ Belville.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor-intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
With over 6 years of experience in the industry, New Era CPAs is one of the nation's leading cannabis accounting firms, helping hundreds of growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies with their tax, legal, and business strategies. New Era CPA's offices cover the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego, and their skilled team is always available to help you take your business to the next level. Visit neweracpas.com for more info and set up a consultation. Welcome to the New Era.
Next to THC and CBD, you can now add CBR to your cannabis vernacular. CBR as in cannabisradio.com.
The world of cannabis is evolving at a frenetic pace. The Russ Belville Show gets behind the headlines to take a deeper look at breaking news in our Cannabis Focus.
Today in the Cannabis Focus, we take a look at the state of California, where the major initiative to legalize marijuana is known as the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, sometimes popularly referred to as the Sean Parker Initiative, thanks to the MySpace creator and Facebook investor Sean Parker, who's now donated $1 million of his own money to the measure. It's also gotten $1 million from Marijuana Policy Project and Drug Policy Alliance combined, and another $250,000, and I can't remember from whom that came from, for a total of $2.25 million already in the bank for this Adult Use of Marijuana Act. Now, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act would legalize 1 ounce and 6 plants and all the harvest from your plants and set up a commercial system of growing and sales and forbid cities from banning indoor home grows
and what else? The possibility of pot lounges. It's a pretty decent legalization, not that unlike what we've got in Washington or California or Washington or Colorado or Oregon or Alaska. In fact, better than Washington because Washington doesn't have home grow. Now, in addition to that initiative, which has all of the major reform organizations supporting it and big players in the California reform and industry supporting it, there are others. Now, the one of recent note that is no longer in play would be the Jack Herer Initiative, the so-called Jack Herer Initiative, or CCHI, which has recently admitted it's not going to have the signatures necessary to make the ballot. Newsflash. But the other initiative that's still in play is one called the Marijuana Control Legalization and Revenue Act, the MCLR. I've spoken with John W. Lee, a major proponent of the act, at one of the recent events I covered. I think it was the International Cannabis Business Conference. MCLR is a good act as well, and in many ways superior to what the Adult Use of Marijuana Act proposes. The problem for MCLR is its lack of juice. That is, it has no money to really move forward with the paid signature gatherers necessary to make the ballot in the state of California. Well, this is where the story begins here for today's Behind the Headlines, and that is a Facebook post that I noted in my feed from Steve Cubby. Now, Steve Cubby is the CEO of Kush Inc., and purports to live this millionaire lifestyle. I see his posts on Facebook all the time. And he and I have kind of gone rounds because he's one of these stoners against legalization. He is against the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, is spreading all sorts of misinformation about it and how harmful it will be to California and the world. So the Facebook post that I saw noted a Business Wire report that Kush Inc. was donating $1 million to the MCLR initiative. Now, I have to kind of fault myself for not doing enough due diligence on this because I saw the report and my first thought was, oh, well, good. At least he's putting his money where his mouth is. That, and rather than fighting against the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, he's putting money toward MCLR. And I will not fault anybody who is fighting for legalization. If you don't like another person's legalization, fine, fight for your own, promote it, but don't fight against someone else's legalization because any legalization is going to be better than the prohibition we all suffer under at this moment. Fortunately, other colleagues of mine did their due diligence and started to poke some holes in this Kush gives $1 million to MCLR thing. First of all, David Downs is the person I've got to give the major hat tip to. In his Legalization Nation column today, writes, dubious stock pitched as California marijuana legalization campaign donation, our rating, sell. And what this really turns out to be is, according to their release from Kush, they said, the board of directors of Kush, a new player in the medical marijuana field, today authorized the donation of $1 million in Kush stock to Americans for Policy Reform in support of their 2016 Marijuana Control Legalization and Revenue Act legalization project. Oh, okay. So it's not a donation of $1 million. It's a donation of $1 million in Kush stock. Well, what is that? Well, Kush is a new penny stock, not traded on the major stock exchanges where you have a lot of consumer protections, but the pink sheets, where it's the Wild West and anything goes. A lot of investment experts are saying it has the makings of a so-called pump and dump scheme where you tout the value of a worthless stock to bring its price up, and then the investors in that stock, the owners of that stock, sell it while the price is high, leaving the investors with little to nothing. About 6,500 investors so far have bought Kush shares. The shares are currently trading at 5 cents per share. They're shooting for an IPO on 4/20, of course, at 10 cents a share, and their goal is to sell 50 million shares. So the idea here is that they would have to sell 10 million shares, and then that could be donated to the MCLR. Doug McVeigh of Drug War Facts says that's a lot of shares of questionable real value that would have to be sold in order to recognize any spendable cash.
Yes, and I'd have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dog.
So, yeah, cannabis finance experts and the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission repeatedly have warned investors to stay away from these pot penny stocks. Sounds to me like MCLR just got a whole bunch of donation of unicorn wishes and fairy dust. Too bad. Well, at least they can vote on legalization through the Adult Use Act. Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at NORML.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
Get the latest updates on the Russ Belville Show by following Radical Russ on Twitter and liking the Russ Belville Show on Facebook.
From dabs to chibas, sativas to indicas, we roll out a whole concentrate of fresh new content every week. It's like going from the greenhouse to the dispensary. CannabisRadio.com.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Drug War Data Mines, we take a look at the stupid and ineffective idea known as drug testing for welfare. This, of course, on the heels of news from WSAZ in Charleston, West Virginia, that a bill that would drug test for welfare is on its way to the governor. On Wednesday, the West Virginia House approved this bill 91-8, and the Senate yesterday, or today, I believe, approved that amended bill 27-7. It's now on its way to the governor for his signature. There are currently 13 states that have legislation requiring some form of drug test for welfare recipients. Supporters of the bill said only those with a reasonable suspicion of drug use would be tested, and it would help locate addicts and get them into treatment centers. Critics have said it hasn't been effective in those states. Well, I'm one of those critics, so let me tell you how ineffective it would be. First of all, the supporters telling you that it would only be for those with reasonable suspicion of drug use aren't doing that out of the kindness of their heart. They're doing that because that is what is required for this to pass constitutional muster. The state of Florida passed a bill years ago that required drug testing for all people applying for welfare, randomly determined. And the Supreme Court, actually I think it was 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, determined that you couldn't do that because random testing for welfare is akin to an unreasonable search and seizure. Because just merely being poor and applying for welfare isn't enough of a probable cause, a reasonable suspicion, I should say, to believe that someone's using drugs. So the latest states that have put these bills together always have some sort of testing or evaluation to manufacture this so-called reasonable suspicion. It usually takes the form of some sort of quiz they have to answer. In one state, it was actually 3 questions. Have you ever been busted for drugs before? Have you ever, been in treatment for drugs? And if you answered yes to any of those, then that was the suspicion they needed to get you to take the drug test. So it's a lot of bunk, first of all, because people can easily lie on these quizzes that they're given. But a look at the states that have implemented these programs have shown that even when they're implemented, they do not do what the proponents claim they're going to do. In the state of Utah, they spent $30,000 giving drug tests to welfare recipients. In the time they did so, 2.6% of those tested were found to have used drugs. The national rate, by the way, is 8.9%. They're finding that poor people, trying to get assistance were less than one third as likely to have tested positive for drugs than the general workforce. Could that have to do with the fact that drugs cost money? that maybe when you're poor, you can't afford drugs? See, the mistake made by proponents of these bills is to think that people are absolute slaves to drugs. There's no way they can stop taking drugs, or to think that it's all completely discretionary, and so they shouldn't spend any of their money on drugs. In Arizona, they tried this. They believed that it would save the state $1.7 million a year, but after 3 years and 87,000 screenings, they found one person who failed a drug test. One in the state of Arizona. The total savings from denying that person benefits was $560. The total they paid out during that time was $200 million. So even if you included the 1,633 people who didn't do the pretest, because what happens sometimes when there's that quiz or the threat of drug test, people just don't apply. Even if you included all those people, you're saving 0.1% of what you needed to save. Similarly, in Oklahoma, when they tried this, they had only 29 drug test failures. They didn't keep track of how much money they saved from those 29 people that they didn't. And remember, when you talk about saving money on welfare, you're talking about not giving assistance to poor people, right? Yeah, we didn't give those 29 people any money to eat or pay rent. And the fees it cost to not do that, the drug testing fees were $74,000. It cost us $74,000 to not help out poor people. Florida's plan, the one that I told you was found to be unconstitutional, they again only had 2.6% of their people turning up positive, and they lost $45,000 net once they figured out all the costs. But the thing that's more insidious about this is the Florida case. The governor, Rick Scott, owns $62 million worth of Sultanic Corporation, which is one of these places that does confidential drug testing. Of course, he shifted his stock over to his wife 3 months before passing these drug testing for welfare laws. But you can see the rent-seeking behavior in that kind of action, trying to mandate some more clients for the business that he owns. We've had at least 29 states that have proposed legislation requiring some sort of drug testing for welfare. No state has ever shown that this has saved more money than it costs to implement. So why do they keep doing it? It's bigotry, folks. It's a way of punishing the poor. It's a way of controlling poor people. It's a way of expressing a moral displeasure in their drug use. It's the same kind of attitude that says, well, they shouldn't be able to buy Lucky Charms on their food stamps either. Look, our people are either free or they're not free. Whether or not our government gives them assistance does not give us the right to treat them as chattel slavers. All right, when we come back, we've got a flashback interview with the legendary Gatewood Galbraith right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your cannabis boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your cannabis needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The Supreme Court is wrong on the Second Amendment.
Okay, maybe you're high too.
Cannabis use isn't the only thing growing. So are we. Grow with us. CannabisRadio.com.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping ganjapreneurs grow.
The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life. Conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult cannabis prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
Today in the Cannabis Community Chat, we go back 6 years to 2010 when I got the opportunity to speak to legendary hemp advocate Gatewood Galbraith. He died at the age of 64 on January 4th, 2012. He was born in Carlisle, Kentucky, and a former Marine and graduate of the University of Kentucky and the University of Kentucky's College of Law. He was an author and worked tirelessly for the people of Kentucky. He was well known for his activities running for governor of Kentucky and generating a lot of headlines for being a marijuana positive and hemp positive activist long before it was popular to do so. He was widely popular for his wit and his unconventional stances. He was almost completely outside of the establishment politics of the Democratic and Republican parties. He had 5 unsuccessful runs for governor, also made a failed bid for agricultural commissioner, U.S. representative, and attorney general. He also worked as a criminal defense attorney and quipped that losing statewide elections doesn't pay worth a damn. Gatewood was known for his outspoken proposals to legalize marijuana and to outlaw mountaintop removal coal mining. He was one of the most colorful individuals I've known in Kentucky politics all my life, said Terry McBrayer, a lawyer, lobbyist, and longtime friend of Gatewood's. And, of course, as I mentioned earlier, he's a longtime friend of Willie Nelson's as well. Name synonymous with hemp legalization. And he spent most of his time of his childhood in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky. He had all sorts of great quips. You'll hear a couple of them in this 2010 interview, some quick lines that he would often use on the stump, talking about hemp and marijuana and the need for legalization. He was particularly held some contempt for Republicans. He recently called former House Speaker Newt Gingrich and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell aliens, not conservatives. They never met a bloated police state they didn't like. The Lexington Mayor Jim Gray said Gatewood gave us political passion and conviction, colorful and unforgettable character, his point of view unvarnished, unfiltered, with the best wit and humor we could ever imagine. Let's go back now to 2010, my chance to speak with Gatewood Galbraith in Kentucky on the issues of marijuana and hemp legalization from a previous episode
of the Normal Daily Audio Stash. Thanks to Normal for permission.
Legalization, decriminalization, lowest law enforcement priority, medical marijuana, ganja sacrament, consumer cannabis, industrial hemp. The world of marijuana law reform involves many different aspects of cannabis that interact nearly every public policy discussion in America, including healthcare, the economy, global climate change, law enforcement and prisons, immigration, religion, free speech, energy policy, and war. Now, we take a look at how re-legalizing marijuana will change the world in our Normal Show Live Cannabis Conversations.
All right, thanks for staying with us for this extended version of Normal Show Live. Joining us by telephone, I hope, is Gatewood Galbraith. Gatewood, are you there, sir?
Yes, sir, I am.
Glad to have you. And also,
can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. We've also, I'm thinking Michael Henning and Diana Alder. Are you available on the line as well? Oh, okay. Maybe they're not hearing us, but Gateway, we'll go ahead with you here. We're talking about the movie Hempsters Plant the Seed, and this is a documentary been in the making for a while, and you're featured prominently in it. Tell us about the documentary and what we're trying to accomplish here.
Well, I'm from Kentucky and have been politically involved in trying to get the laws changed there for some time. And given Kentucky's history and heritage as the world's largest cannabis producer for over 100 years, we thought it would be a good place to start the battle. And in 1990, early 90s, Woody Harrelson came to Kentucky to plant some hemp seeds to challenge the law. And his escapade was filmed by Michael Henning and the folks with his group. And as they were there, they began archiving interviews with other activists in the realm of changing the marijuana laws. And so they got to Woody, they got to Willie Nelson, they got to Merle Haggard, they got Julia Butterfly Hill, and then they got me. And so they put this together. They followed our efforts over many years, and they put this together in a film that examined the entire concept of changing the laws over about a 16 to 18-year period of time. And it's been updated, and it's been contemporized, and it's having its world premiere at the Artivist Film Festival here on Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood, and it shows tonight at 9:15. And it's a great film. It captures a lot of stuff that should have been archived and is dutifully done. And it's an interesting film, and it's going to get worldwide distribution after this film festival.
That's excellent, and we love seeing more stuff. You know, one of our contributors is a vendor who does a lot of vending of hemp products, and of course he has to get all these products from China or Canada or Australia, all these other countries. And when we started mentioning that we're going to have you on the show and we're going to be talking about hemp, he was very, very excited about that. What are some things about hemp legalization here that you find are most troubling? What are some of the roadblocks we need to get past in order to legalize industrial hemp?
Well, I've kind of taken a look at it from a little different perspective than a lot of folks. I was the first hippie, I guess, to write a plan for legal marijuana for its economic benefits. I wrote that in 1976 and talked about recovering the economy, and especially the depressed economy of Kentucky, by rediscovering its history and its heritage, and rediscovering cannabis as a crop in all of its aspects, both the industrial, textile, and the medical smoking part of it. And but what I'm taking a look at, and what really motivates me, is the fact that by their illegalization of this plant, the people in charge, the man, has severed our relationship with the natural cycle of things. That they have taken upon themselves telling you that you can't plant a seed in God's earth. I don't care if it's a widget, much less marijuana. If they tell you you can't plant a seed in God's green earth, what they're doing is severing the most basic relationship we have in this birth cycle with our nature and with Mother Earth. So I think in order to do that the government has to have extraordinarily persuasive information that by planting that seed that you're harming yourself or other people. And not only do they have extraordinary information, they don't have one iota of information that says planting the seed is going to act to the detriment of the human individual. And in the United States of America, a true patriot and a nationalist, we ought to have much more freedom than to be able to be self-determinative and sovereign human beings, to be able to plant seed in the earth and consume the green natural plant that comes up out of it. So hemp and cannabis became iconic on the turnaround from America as the home of the brave and land of the free over to over to a depressed, controlled economy and controlled population. And so, given the history of heritage of Kentucky as a leadership in that, I thought it was important that the challenge to this fascism, the challenge to this tyranny, come from a state like Kentucky. And so, since someone else was doing it, I kind of stepped up and took the leadership role on that. I wanted to thank Rick Cusick. I want to thank all the heroes that have gone before us in what they're trying to do. Jack Hare became a real dear friend of mine, and I delivered his eulogy at his funeral. And so I want to pay tribute to all the activists out there. And this film, The Hipsters, is a tribute, in fact, to many folks. We're going to dedicate it to Jack Hare tonight at the premiere on Hollywood Boulevard.
That's excellent. This is at the Artivist Film Festival taking place Hollywood Boulevard, 9:15 p.m. Pacific time. We're speaking with Gatewood Galbraith, a longtime hemp activist and, of course, a former candidate for governor in Kentucky.
Candidate now, my friend.
You're running again.
Running for governor.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm running as an independent in November 2000. I've run before. I'm running as an independent candidate in 2011, and it looks just absolutely excellent. We had the chance to put Kentucky at the forefront and to break a lot of new ground. If I get to be governor, the whole ball game changes.
Absolutely.
We're going to ground every one of the helicopters hovering over the fields and gardens of the people of the state of Kentucky. This is America, not Afghanistan, and we're not an occupied territory, and we're not going to treat our citizens like we are one. You know, our fathers and grandfathers didn't fight on the beaches of Normandy and Iwo Jima, so you have to pee in a cup to hold a job in America.
That's right.
We're going to try to lift Kentucky out into prosperity by rediscovering the principles that made America great, the sovereignty of the individual, self-determination, and rights to privacy, which have been absolutely decimated in this war on the people in the guise of the war on drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well spoken, sir. You mentioned how the government is, the man is keeping us down by, breaking our bond with the most sacred thing we can do, plant a seed, something that connects us to the earth. And you say they should have to demonstrate, a great harm in order to have that power. And, in that respect, with that in mind, do you see that cannabis as a recreational substance or as a drug, so-called drug, impedes the fight for legalizing industrial hemp because the man can say, well, there's a harm from the drug. Do you see that?
That's what this whole film is about, my friend. Hipsters plant the seed. I wrote a book called The Last Free Man in America Meets the Synthetic Subversion. And what I say today is it's a big battle between the natural cycle and the synthetic cycle. All the kinds of commodities of civilization, fiber, fuel, medicine, and food that used to be produced by the farmer from the land has now been taken over by the synthetic manufacturers, and they did that by outlawing the farmer and criminalizing the farmer in the production of his natural products. So there's a great number of people out there who run the synthetic products that are attempting to keep it from changing, the laws from changing back. I call them the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, and corporate fascist elite son of a bitches who see the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as impediments. Are you getting that distracted noise too?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We've got it. Hold on.
There you go. That's no longer there.
Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
We okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. There's a lot of people who are setting policy in this country, the United States of America, right now, who have never said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America or to the republic for which it stands. They're not warm and fuzzy about us or our children, and they see the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as impediments to the implementation of a new world order and global economy. And as I say, I call them the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate fascists and son of a bitches, who have taken the cannabis plant, which is the most productive and the most valuable plant ever domesticated by man. It's not the answer to all the world's problems, but it sure is iconic in that it's the answer to more than any other plant is. And so they are dead set against the people reclaiming this plant as a heritage and as a tool to make life look better for everybody. So I think that they're going to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at us to try to keep us from making the change in these laws. But I favor what my friend Mark Emery says when his slogan is "Overgrow the government," and I think that the critical mass has been reached in that, and I think that the laws are going to change. But what we must do is keep it in the hands of the people who are putting the market together right now and have put the market together, and keep it out of the hands of corporate America.
Oh,
they're up to no good, and we ought not let them have it.
Absolutely. The movie is Hempsters Plant the Seed. It's at the Artivist Film Festival tonight, Hollywood Boulevard, Hollywood, California, 9:15 p.m. And Gatewood Galbraith, you're running for governor of Kentucky. How can people help you in the fight to claim that office?
Thank you so much, my friend. I've run before, but this time the dissatisfaction is so broad and deep that a lot of people want to vote for change that never did before. They can go to gatewood.com, see what it's all about, and I'll give you the world's shortest political speech. If I was going to lie to you, I'd already been elected governor.
Thank you so much, Gatewood Galbraith, and good luck. That's just an amazing time speaking with Gatewood Galbraith there on Normal Show Live back in 2010. He passed away in 2012. I can only imagine his take on this 2016 election with Donald Trump and the rest of the clown car. Oh my goodness, we could use some more people like Gatewood Galbraith, couldn't we? If you've not seen that movie, I do believe it's available on Netflix now. It's called Hempsters Plant the Seed. Check it out. A lot of great pieces and a lot of appearances in that film. Worthy of a download. All right, when we come back, we take a look at how our government is suppressing the will of the people in Maine, Michigan, and nationwide right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Tommy Chong is ready to cut through the smoke and change the tone of Tilk Radio.
I hope everybody's got their vape pen handy, or their pipe, or their bong, or whatever you use to do your medicine.
But you don't. It's not a requirement. You don't have to be high for this show.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
I don't know who you're talking to. You have to be high to do anything. At least I do. I don't know about you. In fact, I've been high so long that being straight is another high.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
Earn your PhD in THC monetization with CannabisRadio.com. Don't be late.
This is the Russ Belville Show, annoying Kevin Sabet since 2012.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Today in the rant, I want to focus on how the wheels of power, how the establishment system works to prevent us, the people, from expressing our will through petitions and at the ballot box. A couple of stories that fit this in the marijuana narrative. The first one, of course, was our headline story today in the Cannabis Radio News about the lawsuit that is now necessary by the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol in Maine. See, they got over almost 100,000 signatures. They turned in 99,229 signatures for their marijuana legalization initiative. And they needed 61,000. So that's pretty good. You know, that's about over it's about a 60% validity rate you'd need. Let's see, 100,000 to 61. You need 62% validity out of those 99,000 signatures. And that's not unheard of. You get paid signature gatherers, you're going to get 65% usually is good to aim for. But they only got credit for 51,000 signatures. They're 10,000 signatures short. And part of the signatures that were disqualified, because there's always some that are disqualified, but a big chunk of the signatures that were disqualified were 17,000 signatures. There was 5,099 petitions, and signed by a notary named Stavros Mendros. And he has a company in Lewiston, Maine called Olympic Consulting. They were hired by the campaign to gather signatures, and they were paid $26,930 for that signature gathering. So 17,000 people who signed 5,099 petition pages, 17,000 signatures invalidated because this one guy who notarizes the bottom of each petition that these were gathered, his signature apparently doesn't match the signature at the Secretary of State's office. Now, this is not a question as to whether or not the 17,000 people who signed were valid signers. That's not even in question right now. As far as we know, and as far as we should assume, the 17,000 people that signed those petitions are valid. And even if we apply a 2/3 validity rate, let's assume that only 2/3 of those 17,000 signatures are valid, there's still enough of them there to be able to push this over the limit and get it on the ballot. So it just reeks of shenanigans from the Maine Secretary of State's office trying to disqualify 17,000 signatures based on one person's signature. Furthermore, the campaign in their lawsuit alleges that the signatures are matching, that the Secretary of State's office doesn't have handwriting experts to determine whether or not this is true. And this brings up something that I think is problematic in our system. A lot of states that have the initiative process have this thing where the petitioner has to sign as well, and that's where sometimes these petitions get tripped up. Why not have the petition gatherer or the notary or whoever it is that has to approve the petitions give a thumbprint? You know, not a thumbprint for everybody that's signing to sign the petition, right? Not, that'd be way too many. But the one person approving it, a thumbprint. There's something that we can scientifically verify. Regardless, this reeks of shenanigans from the state of Maine, just trying everything they can do to disqualify enough signatures to postpone the inevitable legalization of marijuana in Maine. There's another state, Michigan, where there's some shenanigans going on. Currently in Michigan, there's, I believe, 2 groups still in the running that are proposing legalization petitions, legalization initiatives, that are funded and have a decent shot of doing this. But again, the legislature, in this case, rather than the Secretary of State's office, the legislature in Michigan has worked to pass a bill to make it tougher to get initiatives on the ballot. It's passed on a party line vote, Republicans in Michigan, requiring, and it's an obscure thing, so let me see if I can explain this. In Michigan, when you collect signatures, you have a 180-day window to collect signatures. So you have the 6-month window, 180 days, to collect signatures. Now, your opponents, people that hate legalization, can challenge some of those signatures by saying, those weren't collected during that 180-day window, and thereby disqualify those particular signatures. But you, as the proponent, have the right to challenge the challenge, right? So if they challenge that you collected them too late, you can say, no, we didn't, and here's the proof, and you can challenge it, take it back, and get your signatures back, right? Well, the bill that just passed, 26-10 vote, Republicans in favor, Democrats opposing, removes the ability to challenge the exclusion of petition signatures. The Senate Majority Leader said the bill just ensures that, quote, everybody will play by the same rules, not by some administrative interpretation. We want to be clear, 180 days with no ambiguity, end quote. But State Democrat Steve Beda says, once again, the majority is making it more difficult for the citizens to be heard. Let's be honest here. The bill isn't intended to clarify election law. Stand up for the people who you represent. It's time to make it easier, not harder, for issues to reach the ballot, end quote. And that's the crux of this issue. Why do we allow our government to pass laws to continually make it tougher to vote or get initiatives on the ballot? It's bad enough that there are 24 states that have no form of citizen-directed lawmaking. They've got no referendums, no amendments, no initiatives, nothing. They got to just go with what their elected officials put together. That's bad enough. But in the states that do have these initiative processes, why do we allow these officials to further restrict these initiative processes? It's already tough to get something on the ballot in Michigan. You need 250,000 signatures for legislation. You need over 315,000 signatures for an amendment. That's not an easy task. Now, the opponents of this, the people who say we need these restrictions, will point to big money interests. Oh, big money interests can buy signature gatherers and get anything they want on the ballot. And then they can put out the ads and get it passed. Well, if they can, then they should be able to. This is the only method by which the people have some means of being able to directly affect their lives, affect their democracy. These so-called big money special interests are just interests. All interests have to have big money in order to play in our politics. I wish it wasn't that way. But if that's the way the game is played, you can't change the game once the marijuana legalizers have figured out how to get enough money together to put together an initiative. Can't change the rules in the middle of the game. It's almost as if they thought, well, as long as they have to have these 100,000s of signatures, it's going to cost so much money, they'll never be able to put anything together. And now that we have legalized some states, and we have shown that, yes, we can organize and get the money necessary and get the donations necessary to pull this off. Now that we do have that power, there's, now we need to put some more roadblocks in the way. Now we need some higher hurdles, some flaming hoops to jump through. This method of disqualifying initiative signatures needs to be tracking in the other direction. We need to be, like the Democratic representative in Michigan said, we need to be finding ways to make it easier for people to vote on these things, easier for people to get stuff on the ballot, not harder. Now, I know some people will complain that this is supposed to be a republic, not a democracy, and will complain that these firewalls need to be put in place to protect our republic from mob rule. And I say to the people who say mob rule is just the elite's preferred term for populist and popular democracy. This is extending into the Democratic race for president as well. And when we come back, top of the hour, we'll talk a little bit about Bernie Sanders and the Democratic race, how that delegate count is going despite Bernie's recent surging. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about California legalization, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, this Marijuana Control Legalization and Revenue Act, MCLR, and the so-called Cubby donation. We'll take your calls, too, at 971-533-7111. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, I'm Radical Russ, live from Astoria, Oregon. We'll be back for Hour 2 in just a couple of minutes. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take you'll see. You plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.